Hello everyone, how's it going? Hope you all have been doing well. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. It's going to be a little chaotic, okay? So I decided I'm going to be giving you guys some A24 recommendations. Books that I think would be really great A24 adaptations. If you didn't know, A24 is a film company that delivers in just really weird, abstract, peculiar, niche, outlandish, other content that not a lot of other mainstream film companies would pick projects on. A lot of the A24 movies are just projects that don't really pertain to like the normalcy? Is that even a word? Wait, I need to look this up. Normalcy pronunciation. Normalcy, okay, I got it. But where was I? A lot of the ideas represented in the movie, or just the movie in its entirety, don't really pertain to the normalcy of a lot of like the mainstream of what people usually watch for their enjoyment. Like you just gotta think as A24 as not like other girls. She's different, okay? She's a little gatekeepy, she hella gaslights, and she's definitely her own girl boss. So that's basically what A24 is in a nutshell. A lot of the A24 movies that I love to watch specifically are the really weird, quiet, surrealist horror genre that they touch on sometimes. They have all kinds of genres, but the genres that I am most excited from them every time they come out with something new, it's either horror, science fiction, or thriller, or just something so weird, right? So weird and abstract. Without any further ado, I'm gonna recommend some books that, that fit that mold, that are not like any other books. And if you read these books, you too will likely fall into the mold of not being like other readers. Being cool, like me. So yeah, the chopstick is back. I'm bringing her back in again. The last video that I filmed, I was like free balling it. Not in that way. Not in that way. I mean, you would never know. You would never know. Moving on. What I meant to say was, I'm not sitting down. I'm not staying in one spot. So if you were going to be annoyed that I'm going to be talking and moving at the same time, this is how I am in real life, okay? I move around a lot. First things first, I've sort of sectioned it off into genres. We're going to go with Beautiful, Brutal, and Heartfelt. The first book that I'm going to recommend, On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Easily, top five. Top 5 favorite books of all damn time. I think I first heard about the news a couple years ago. I was so excited. I was like, literally cast me, because I'm also Vietnamese. I will literally be the background actor. You don't even have to pay me to be there. And so far, I have read 3 of his books. And by God, that man, like of all the books that I'm recommending today, his talent is unmatched. Like I have yet to read anything remotely close to his type of work, or to his type of writing in general. Like his writing will open just different doors and lines and pathways into your brain. This book, so beautiful. It's really short as well. It's about the son of an immigrant who moves with his mother to the US and just recounting his loss, his innocence of childhood, masculinity, exploration of being queer, the American identity. But all of this, the format in this is really interesting. It's written in a letter to his mother who can't read English. So in a nutshell, poetic, devastating, and beautiful, and I cannot wait to see how A24 adapts this. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is probably less heard of. It's a little unknown, right? I talked about this book sort of early on in my YouTube days, but this book is Black Iris by Elliot Wake. This name right here, it's a dead name, okay? He goes by Elliot Wake. This book changed me. It changed how I saw new adult books in general. This was one of the thought-provoking new adult books that I read. An introduction, if you will, into that particular genre. Now when I think of like new adult, it's a bunch of like romance, spice, smut, right? This is a little bit different in that it is so much more introspective than a lot of the other new adult books that I've read. If you like the movie Promising Young Woman and those vibes, this book has it all. It's about a young woman who goes on a revenge spree on everyone who has wronged her. And this book was just so brutal, chaotic, animalistic. The writing here, oh my God, the writing here was just so fucking good. It was like intoxicating. I'm just gonna sum it all up in this one sentence. Bisexual rage. And the rage, it is crisp, clear, and sweet. If you're looking for something reminiscent of like new adults romance, but a lot more darker and grittier, if you are wanting to look for a sharper edge in that particular genre, I can just already imagine the aesthetic. Bright neon lights, purple, maybe its theme color, slow moving and yet ethereal shots. I gotta say, I feel like the vibe of Euphoria would definitely fit well with this one. So now we're going to move on into sort of like the sci-fi portion of this list. First up, I have Middlegame by Seanan mcguire. This is also another favorite of mine, but I use the term favorite very loosely here. I read it only once. All you need to know is that it's about these twins who were born into the world in like this most unconventional way. They were essentially created and made in a laboratory. And because of who and what they are, they sort of have special abilities that are unique to each of the twin. One of them is like an Einstein genius with math, and the other one is skilled at languages, words, just efficient in a way that the human brain cannot understand. When these two siblings are reunited and on the run from a very evil man, they slowly realize their place in the world. Basically, whatever the cost, do not achieve godhood. It sounds very weird and analytical, and in a way this book was. A lot of science fiction books confuse me in general, but if I had to put my faith in like a studio that would, do the work right, A24 has got my back in that field. Another book in the realm of science fiction is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is one of the books that I read in a reading vlog in the previous video, where I read 12 books in 24 hours. You can check that out. This one just sort of blew my mind in the most chaotic dream fever way possible. I literally read this book like a week ago, and I still cannot understand, honestly, a single thing this book had to offer. But I still got it in a sense. Do you guys ever get that feeling where you read something, you don't understand it, but at the same time, at its core, at your core, you understand everything. Everything. This was that book for me. I didn't understand half of what was going on, and at the same time, I understood it, not to understand it, but to just feel it, right? I love talking abstractly. It just sounds just so much more important and unique because, I'm not like other girlies. Anyways, this book is about two opposing agents who write love letters to each other, who fall in love, despite being on the opposite sides of a war. This one has a lot of time traveling, time strands, time paradoxes. One of them is sort of like part machine, super technological, futuristic, and the other one is made up of like half human anatomy and half organic matter and plants and all that. So it's very strange and very weird, but at the same time, extremely unique. And it's also sapphic, which I fucking loved. It was very telling when they proclaimed their love for each other in like 2 letters saying XOXO to each other, which I thought was really cute. Not to fall in line with that stereotype, but I thought this book was so weird and phenomenal. That is why it's on this list. Alright, so for this section, we're going to be moving to the surrealist books, okay? Coming in hot at whatever number this is, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Okay, so I had certain qualms about this. Do I think A24 would make a great adaptation of this book? I do. However, if they did adapt this, they would sort of remake its image, because when you read this book, you sort of get a huge vibe of dark academia. But I feel like if they did adapt Ninth House, it would be a little bit different, a little bit more art housey, I think. I feel like if A24 did adapt this, it would be something different from what we were expecting, and say from like a mainstream film company like Universal, DreamWorks, or even Netflix, right? Can you imagine Netflix adapting this? They could. It just wouldn't be a vibe. Like A24 here would definitely fit this vibe, right? But in a different way. If you knew what this book was about, it was all the craze back when it first came out, because this was like Leigh Bardugo's first attempt into the adult category, the adult genre. And a lot of people had like mixed feelings because they were surprised and shocked at how dark it was, with a lot of gore and just how graphic and violent it was. And I was like, guys, come on. This isn't Six of Crows or Shadow and Bone. This is different. And I think they were sort of expecting something similar along those lines. It's about a young girl who basically incorporates herself at a private league school, which she can only get into with the deal saying that she has to infiltrate and investigate this secret sect of a cult of a group at this school. There's also magic, elitism, and old money involved. So, that sounds like your cup of jam, your cup of tea. There you go. Okay, so for this next book, you know how I said earlier, On Earth, Where You're Briefly Gorgeous is like one of my top 5 favorite books of all time? Well, you can consider Piranesi by Susana Clarke on the top 3. So like I said, this is top 3 favorite books of all time, like unmatched, unheard of. She is definitely different. And this is sort of a little bit out of realm, I guess, for A24, because they don't do a lot of like surrealist fantasy, but a lot of like surrealist other things. But the reason why I'm recommending it is because a lot of the movies that A24 produces they all have one thing in common. They are all intellectual movies. Obscure, out of the box, outlandish. And this has it all. I'm not gonna even tell you what this book is about. All you need to know is that it takes place in a single location and a slow and deliberate, thought-provoking callback to your inner childhood nostalgia. This book is in my top 3 for a reason. I think, if I can remember correctly, the only fantasy movie that I know from A24 would probably be The Green Knight. You know, if you're looking for a methodical, philosophical type of read, I think, and I know, A24 would adapt the shit out of Piranesi. Also, the fact that I said methodical and philosophical, you know, so fast, once, is a skill. Spoiler alert, it was not once. You know, so if you're looking for a methodical, Okay, so the next book that I'm going to recommend, Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mendel. This book is sort of on the cusp in between surrealism and science fiction. It was such an intimate and beautiful and just impactful read. This was like stepping into a scene where you're suddenly remembering a memory that you had maybe like 20 years ago when you were a baby that you never even recalled before, or going into like a store and all of a sudden like this particular scent brings you back to, you know, a memory or a place that you haven't recalled before, not even in this lifetime, but a previous, and you're like, did I just imagine that? Or was that just like a strong sense of deja vu? That is basically what sums up the vibe for this book. It's about these different people across timelines in the universe who all experience sort of the same sound. However, it's different for each and every one of them. It was just so different and an intriguing read. It almost felt like a slice of life, a normal contemporary literary fiction book. The way the chapters and the characters were interspersed throughout the book, and it wasn't like that for every single character or every single chapter. Like sometimes when you read some of the chapters, you feel a sense of it being really profound. A lot of what I'm saying have to deal with like vibes, you know? So if you're that type of reader who really loves feeling all the feels, all the vibes, this is a recommendation for you. I think it would be really interesting seeing A24 adapt this because a lot of the story is told in a non-linear format, and it's sort of like science fiction as well. And this is one of the more introspective intellectual books that sort of take a step back on the definition of what it is to be a human, on humanity in general. And I think a lot of like A24 movies really like to take a look at that aspect. So, all right, so this next book is sort of like a thriller fairy tale, you know, which is a really interesting combination. This is A History of Wild Places by Shea, Ernshaw. This one I read last Christmas, and it was definitely a Christmas book in that it felt so isolated and cold and mysterious all at the same time. This one primarily follows different characters who at all some point or another end up in the exact same place. Either person A was looking for person B, or person B was found by person C that is inhabited by a group of people who stick to themselves in the small village. However, not all of the secrets are safe, or secret for that matter, and a lot of it was really interesting because it sort of had like this fairy tale vibe, this element to it, and yet it sort of pulls back sometimes into like this mystery drama regarding all of these characters. So, you know, for a rather quiet, cozy, calm, fairy tale-like thriller, I would use the term thriller very loosely here, more mystery than thriller. I thought it was a really great read. I think I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars, but you know, I do think it would make a great seasonal holiday movie from A24. So there you go. Okay, so now we're hopping seasonal holidays. Okay, we're going from Christmas to summer with Summer Suns by Leigh Mendelo. This is another favorite of mine. I would say top 10, okay? I read this a couple years ago. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the characters because there are a lot of surprises in here, in the fact that several of those aspects are similar to one of my favorite series of all time, which is The Raven Boys, or The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. Like, that 4-book series is pretty much the pinnacle, the backbone of my entire personality, this channel, if you will. So when I first read and completed this book, I was blessed. My eyes, my brain, blessed to finally find something that was, you know, similar in that vein, in that vibe of The Raven Cycle. This is sort of like the more darker, mature, grittier version of the characters if they grew up. This one primarily follows our main character who goes to Nashville, of all places, to investigate the death of his best friend, which was ruled as a suicide. However, he knows this not to be true. So his investigation leads him on into this graduate program at the university, which involves his best friend's roommates, aka boys, hot summers, generational wealth, familial curses, and above all, kinship. So a lot of secrets to be held, especially since after the death of his best friend, our main character basically inherits a bunch of wealth and different things that he never knew that his dead best friend had. But above it all, he is haunted by a ghoul, a ghost, an apparition of his dead best friend. So it takes him on this journey. The relationships in here, the friendships that were made, it really reminded me of the dynamic with the Foxhole Court. I don't know if you guys have ever read that particular series. It had a huge chokehold on Tumblr back in the day. You know, back on me too. Actually, I just reread that trilogy. Fucking loved it. But if you really love the Raven Boys and the Foxhole Court, this is the book for you. And I just know if A24 were to adapt this, brilliance. It would be filled with hot country boys, depressed boys, ghosts, ghouls, and curses. Also with a slight touch of like dark academia. I don't know if dark academia sort of counts in Nashville of all places. All right, moving on to the horror genre of our list. And I move places because switch it up, why not? First up in our horror category, Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. I think this book is so underrated and just so different. This is also the same author who wrote Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is made into a movie, literally one of my favorite movies of all time. The fact that he also wrote this is just astounding to me. Like a totally different genre. And I think this would make a perfect horror movie from A24. So this one primarily follows a mom and a son who are on the run and who move to the small town. However, one fine morning, the son vanishes. For a whole week straight, no one can find him until one day he suddenly emerges from the woods unscathed. He returns with a voice only he can hear inside of his head with a dire, serious mission. He has to build and complete a treehouse by Christmas Day, or everyone in the town, including his mother, will be killed. It is really dark, a bit gory, really ominous, really creepy and unsettling. Honestly, the last horror movie that I watched in theaters, actually pretty recent from A24, was Talk to Me. This movie was just so good and different, so well acted, directed, everything about it. It was just so unsettling and creepy as well. It wasn't as scary as I would say like Hereditary. It's about a group of teens who want to get this special high when they're holding an embalmed hand. They basically get a huge boost of like serotonin, a huge rush when they get possessed by a ghost for 90 seconds. Pretty unique, pretty cool. If I had to sell this book, given a pitch to A24 for them to, adapt this book, I would say Imaginary Friend is a love product from A Nightmare on Elm Street and Coraline with a hint of Stranger Things. Of course, I could not add this book to this list, but I have seen it on other people's A24 lists as well. And this is Bunny by Mona Awad. This book is probably the most fitting for an A24 movie. It's weird and literary, it has twists and thrills. It's about this young college student who gets embroiled with a group of girls who are sort of like a cult of their own. And this little clique or cult of girls, whatever you want to call them, they call each other, refer to each other as Bunny. And one day, our main character gets an exclusive invitation to join them for lunch at their place. And things spiral from there. But I do heavily agree with everyone who has mentioned this book on their list because it is most fitting. All right, next up, we're diving into the slasher categories of horror. I love slashers. This is My Heart is a Chainsaw and Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. I would say between the two, My Heart is a Chainsaw, would be more fitting for an A24 film. But also, The Night of the Mannequins is also very weird because it's about a mannequin who gets involved in a prank and comes to life and starts killing teenagers. So My Heart is a Chainsaw is a little bit more nuanced than that. It sort of dives into the aspects of like gentrification, female characters in horror movies and slashers. I, for one, didn't really enjoy the book as much as other people did. I read this for the Late Night Book Club, which is on hiatus for now, but I do think it would make a really thought-provoking, fun, and visceral slasher, just a different slasher that's less mainstream than like your typical avid slasher film. Most of the time you watch those, you turn your brain off and you watch people get sliced and diced. Whereas in this one, it sort of, gets deep, cuts deep, if you will. All right, so now we're moving on into sort of like the romance, slice of life, the quiet books, if you will. I saw Past Lives a few months ago, and I thought it was a brilliant movie. I really liked it, how just real and quiet and grounding it was. About the people you meet and might fall in love with. But even if it's like the right person, timing, the wrong time could be everything, So the first book I'm going to recommend is Memorial by Bryan Washington. This is sort of like a comedic, pretentious book at the same time, involving an interracial couple. It essentially follows these two characters. One of them has to go back to Japan to assist his dying father, while his Japanese mother stays with his partner. And the dynamic and relationship between the mother and her son's partner, boyfriend, the witty banter that they had going on with the language barrier, it was just so pure and wholesome and complicated all at the same time. It's just a very slow, quiet book, how I thought Past Lives was, and I think it would be a really great A24 movie. So now we are taking a little small trip to the French countryside during the 80s, following a summer romance between these two boys with Lie With Me by Philipe Besson, translated by the Molly Ringwald. This book was devastating. This book, albeit so short, was just so good, so poignant. The writing, the translation, I gotta say, Molly Ringwald pulled through with the translation. And I guess that's pretty much all you need to know for how short it is. But what's really interesting about it is that it's sort of read like a memoir in of itself, with different flashes and snatches of our main character's life, told in different stages of his life, of meeting your first true love and the aftermath of what happens afterwards with all that. I would really love to see A24, develop this. I think it would be a heart-wrenching time, similar with what they did with Moonlight. Last and not least, we have Swimming in the Dark. If you came from my previous video, you already know I had to include this one in as well. This one also takes place in the 80s, and it follows the romance between these two soft Polish boys. I will literally never forget the characters in this book. Their story, this one, I gotta say, it's not as heartbreaking as Lie With Me, but it is still bittersweet. It is just devastating in a different way. This is also another book that I read in the previous video for 24 hours reading vlog, but holy moly, utterly captivating. There's something about his writing that was just so heavenly to me. The way he described their blossoming summer romance in a small Polish town in the countryside was just, I fucking loved it. If you want to see my whole thought process, my reaction, my review for this book, you can check out the previous video. But this is definitely a book I want to see from A24, because I do think they would absolutely nail it in the park, do it justice, just bringing out all of the raw beauty, human emotion that this book had to offer. It was just divine. Fucking loved it. I'm literally so speechless when it comes to talking about this book, because the way the author captured the innermost connection with two people falling in love was just so surreal. I fucking loved it. And so yeah, that is my last and final recommendation for a book with A24 vibes. Yeah, in a nutshell, read this fucking book. That is my recommendation. You're welcome. All right, and there you have it. All of the books that I think have really great A24 vibes, essentially just book recommendations for me. I hope you guys found this recommendations list worthy of your time. Please go pick some of these books up. Let me know if you read any of them. Tell me your thoughts. If you have any other bookish recommendations that you think would make really great A24 movies and whatnot. I also want to quickly mention that I also have a Patreon where you can find exclusive video content, reading sprints, and a monthly book club. We'll be reading tomorrow, which is another book that I've seen floating around on other people's A24 book recommendation lists as well. I'm really intrigued and excited to get into this because this has the craziest hype surrounding it. Everyone who has read it has really loved it, like pretty much on Book Talk, BookTube, Bookstagram, Book Twitter, Book Everywhere. So really looking forward to reading it, and I'll leave the link to my Patreon down below. Yeah, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all soon in the new video.